Hi, I'm Dave Wedzik, Director of Instruction for Medicus Golf and the owner of Golf Evolution in downtown Erie, Pennsylvania. We hope you enjoy this video, which will cover a portion of the 5 Simple Keys learning system. Hi, I'm Dave Wedzik. I'm here today with Eric Barzeski, and we want to talk about key number 4, sweet spot path, or what we term diagonal sweet spot path as part of the 5 Simple Keys learning system. And really, the important part of this video is to get everyone out there watching to understand how to properly attain the diagonal sweet spot path. And most of this is going to focus on the backstroke. We do understand and know that there are many different backstrokes that can get the player a proper or efficient for them diagonal sweet spot path. We know that typically, if we looked at just players on the PGA Tour and doing our research, this club head or sweet spot of the club is generally traveling, or always with the best players, traveling down the inclined plane on the downstroke. Or if you were to picture this as the roof of a house, it would be traveling very much diagonally downward down the roof of the house. Never like straight in along the wall or slashing across this ball to the left. So again, many ways to attain that. We're going to talk about the really good, efficient way to make sure the hands on the backswing not only go up and back, but also go inward, but go inward properly. Right. Okay, so a lot of our players, we might find a player who's having a tough time getting the club head or the sweet spot to come down properly on the downswing, and this is important for that player. If you're one of these players who's maybe hitting too much across the ball or not swinging in to out enough. So if I ask Eric to just set up, and we're going to kind of talk about how we go about this and do this, we'll show both incorrectly, then correctly. So what I've done is we've put a nice bright green piece of duct tape right here along where the shirt seam on Eric's shirt would be. And that is going to establish us sort of a measuring point, so we can look at a relationship between where Eric's right elbow is reaching in relation to sort of that shirt seam or that piece of tape. So if I was simply to give him instruction, and a lot of you have heard this instruction, look, you need to swing the club or your hands more in on the backswing, okay? So if I was just to give him instruction and he did that without any rhyme or reason, it could look something like this, where he's gone ahead, and you can see the way he's loaded his arms here, that he did it more through, early in the swing at least for sure, he did it more through loading the arms across his chest and pulling his right elbow or retracting it very much back behind him like this. Now what that does is, yes, it gets his hands inward, but it also puts his arms in what we might term an orbit around his body, or his elbows here in a position around his body that makes it very difficult to get them out of there on the downswing. I would say this is going to lead to the greatest compensation on the downswing. Would that be a good example? You're going to have to do something from there to fix that.
Elbow from behind my body, basically, back in front.
So we see some players compensate and throw the arms out and come over the top. We see other players that they don't want to come over the top, they're a better player, so they actually swing in to out too much because their arms are trapped back there. And this is simply because in trying to get those arms and hands and the club inward enough, they're doing it with the arms and the retraction of the right arm like this.
Right, and we'll give you a rear view of that right now.
Yeah, so from the posterior, you're going to get a really good view. And you can see, what I'm going to point out here is, here's the shirt seam, and you can see how far Eric's right elbow has traveled back behind this. So again, his arms are stuck or trapped or back here in a place where there's a way to play golf from there. It just makes it very difficult. There's a lot of compensation is going to happen from there.
Right.
So, and by the way, too, one other thing to point out, a lot of times this looks very cramped because of the way the arm goes back behind it, but it's not really an extension issue. It's just simply the way the right elbow is retracting and the position and the location of the right arm in relation to the shirt seam.
All right, you can see my right elbow is not folded past 90 degrees. It's not like I'm doing this on the backswing.
Right.
It's just my shoulder is retracted and my elbow is moved beyond.
From an extension point of view, it's actually very good.
Right.
Okay, so if I wanted to go ahead and get into how to do this properly and have Eric do a really efficient, good job on the backswing, I'm going to have him do this more by keeping the pressure points on his body, so as the relationship of the underside of his right arm and his elbow, those relationships consistent to where they start on his body, and ask him to turn his shoulders, or just turn at a slightly faster rate to make sure he gets his arms and hands inward properly. So now, if I bring this back down to halfway even, and we'll go from there, you can see that his elbows are much closer together Okay, and an example of that would be if I asked him to pull his elbows apart, you'd see how far that elbow starts to retract back there. So his elbows are much closer together, and his shoulders are turning at a slightly faster rate. So now you can see you got the shirt seam here as marked by the green tape, his elbows very much in front of the shirt seam, yet his hands have still come plenty inward, and this club will have a great chance to still swing down the proper diagonal sweet spot path without compensation. Let's go ahead and take that fully up to the top. You can see that those relationships are maintained. Good. Elbows closer together, hands in plenty far, elbow in front of the shirt seam. Eric, where do you feel this? Do you feel like there's a little pressure point attached there, kind of underneath your...
Right. My elbow is not stuck to my rib cage, but my armpit is not completely free either. Somewhere in the midpoint of my arm.
So you're not feeling like the elbow is touching your ribs,
right?
But this slightly a little bit on the underside of that
Right. It feels like it's
right
touching
arm.
the front of my chest.
Ben Hogan would be a great example of the really good elbow, of really good right arm and elbow location there.
Absolutely.
So once you show him the posterior view, doing it properly, you can note he's going to keep his elbows close, pressure points intact. His relationships have been maintained beautifully here. This is really nicely done. Shoulders are turned fully, and you can see the difference between where that elbow location is now in relation to where it was before. Okay, so now when he starts to come down, his arms are going to return right back out in front of him, and he can properly swing that sweet spot path right down the roof of the house, so to speak, and a perfect diagonal sweet spot path for playing golf.
Yeah.
Hope this helps. If you're looking for more information on 5 simple keys, check out purestrike5sk.com.